Hey guys, all you artists, painters, writers, filmmakers, creatives, how y'all doing? I hope you're doing well. As you know, I took a little break. I was hanging with my son and attending his wedding. It all went very well. It was a really nice wedding. We've got a new set of family members, and for my son, this is the biggest adventure of his life. So I'm praying for him and I'm wishing him well. But now I'm back on the block with another episode. So as always, I welcome you to Rippon Studio, my YouTube channel. I hope you get something out of this episode. Please like and subscribe. That helps me out a lot. Today I'm going to be talking about the first painting in my American Woman, a pinup lynching series called American Lexicon. I figured I'd share the origin of the painting, where the specific idea came from for this particular piece. I painted it over a year ago, and it was the first painting that I put up on my site, www.ripponstudio.com. So if you go there, you can read up on the painting as well as read an article that was written on the piece by a good friend of mine, Sam Custodio. Now, I'll break this down into two sections. The first will be the actual specifics of my technique, and the second will be an explanation of where I got the idea from. When I started this painting, I had no idea that I would one day do a YouTube channel, and so I didn't make any recordings of what I was actually doing as I did it. After I knew what I wanted to paint, I tried looking for a model to pose for me. That didn't go well at all. I did find a woman who was the perfect body type, and at first, she said she was interested in working with me, but then at the last moment, she opted out. I decided to look for a photograph of a black woman that I could use to paint the image. Once I found that photo, I started using Photoshop to write the words on her body as an outline so I knew how everything would fit together. If you go online and look up racist slurs for black people, you might be shocked at the number of pejoratives that pop up. There are so many that the body of the woman couldn't contain them all. So, I decided to use the background of the whole canvas and plaster the words on there as well. I used Adobe Illustrator to map out the size and the placement of each word and how the image of the woman would fit on the canvas without disrupting the composition of those words. Once I was satisfied with my overall composition, I called up a company in Massachusetts, which is an art print shop called Image Tech. It's run by a man named Tom Grassi. When I need custom canvases done for me, I call up Tom and he gets the job done. I'll leave his company contact info in my description down below. After I send Tom my digital file with the specs of the canvas size, he prints it out. Since the canvas is so large, he has his partner D deliver the canvas to my home. After that, I print out the image of the woman with the words drawn on her body to match the canvas size. Kinko's is pretty good for doing that. Once that's done, I chalk the back of what is now my transfer sheet, and then I trace the image onto the canvas, and I start the painting process. In the case of this piece, I did a grisaille underpainting in green. I know I'm not supposed to paint my grisaille in green. Most people paint it in gray, but I'm not really one for obeying the rules and getting caught up in what most people do. Once the grisaille is done and it dries, then I paint over it with full color. One of the things that's always happening when I'm painting is I make decisions about elements of the piece as I'm working. For example, the words on her body were a lot neater on the grisaille than they ended up being as I moved towards the finish. I figured since these words were derogatory, they should have a rough appearance. I also started thinking about the social impact of what we say and how our words can lead to peace or violence. Since I'm sure these words have led to a lot of pain and bloodshed, I figured I'd spatter red paint for blood on each word, with the word nigger having the most blood on it and being the most prominent. Moving into the second half of this, I need to start out by saying I'm going to make some broad brush statements that some might find offensive. I'm not trying to offend you, but then again, I'm not trying to not offend you. I'm relating my experiences as they happened. Take it how you like. I moved to Albany in the year 2000. The Trade Center was still standing when I arrived. I figured I'd go through Manpower, a temporary job agency, just to get my foot in the door at some local company. I was sent to a pharmaceutical company along with several other temp employees. We all started with the promise that after a few months our jobs would become permanent. I was one of 2 black people in the entire company at that location. Everyone was very nice to me. After working there past the time when I should have been hired, I came to work one September morning and was shocked along with everyone else to see the Trade Center attacked and go down. I remember thinking, someone is going to get a red, white, and blue boot up their behind for this. Shortly after that, I was giving a lift to one of the permanent employees. I'll call him William. He was in my car ranting about how America should respond to the terrorist attack, and he said, "We should just go over there and bomb them all out of existence. They're nothing but sand niggers anyway." Man, it took everything in me to keep from pulling that car over and kicking him out. I opted to say instead, William, that's an interesting compound word you came up with. Sand niggers. He seemed confused by my expression. We rode the rest of the way in silence. I stayed at that company for several months after that. There was always some reason that I wasn't hired permanently, while all of the other white temp employees were. When they wanted to make space for another new employee, they had to let go of someone. It was between me and the other black person, a woman named Karen. They let Karen go. It got to the point where in a conference call meeting, all of the other employees who were hired brought up the fact that I was yet to be hired and wanted to know why. That question was tabled for later. The only permanent black employee was the cleaning lady, who took me aside privately one day and said, "They never hire black people here permanently. I'm the only permanent hire and I'm the cleaning lady. Do with that what you will." Shortly after that, I quit. But like I said, they were all very nice. At another company, where everyone was also very nice to me, I was the only black person there. I was hired and worked as the assistant to a white guy who I would call Scott. Scott was the business development fellow in the company. Over time, as Scott and I got to know each other, we wound up talking about social, political, and racial issues. As we became more comfortable working with each other, I found that Scott felt that black people were always talking, quote, too much about race. Everybody just needed to get out here and make that money. Scott was what I and many other black people would call an arrogant white boy. Now, why do I say that? Well, because over time I noticed that it seemed like there was always an undercurrent of white supremacist ideology laced into some of the questions he would ask me. I could tell that he never asked me a question without always assuming he already knew the answer. The unstated answer for him always seemed to be, "That's some nigger nonsense." For example, on an Ash Wednesday, Scott, being a devout Catholic, came to work with ash on his face. As the day went on, we wound up talking about race and black men. He asked the question, "Why do black guys wear those wrap things on their heads?" He meant do-rags, but he didn't know that's what they were called. The question taken at face value was harmless, but the tonal assumption was not. I responded by telling him that the cloth is called a do-rag, and that I would answer his question if he answered mine. I asked him if he knew the biblical significance of the ash that he was wearing on his face. He responded that he did not, to which I said, "The most ignorant black guy wearing a do-rag knows why he's wearing it. While you put ash on your face religiously every year and you don't even know why." I proceeded to tell him why he wears ash on his face, but declined to answer his initial question. Eventually, Scott was fired from the job, and I was tasked with going through his emails in order to separate work-related mail from personal stuff. When I got into his email, I found a folder that contained emails of pictures comparing black people with animals and all sorts of nigger jokes that he and all the other men in the company circulated amongst themselves. Everyone except for the president and the VP, of course. I shared my findings with some of the women in the company that I'd become friendly with. They were all shocked. That's when I came up with the idea for American Lexicon. It's why the painting displays the words, "Don't act like you're shocked. in red letters. In closing, let me say this. American Lexicon is about stripping away the BS and the politically correct nonsense that is used to mask our internal prejudices and racist ideas. It's about sparking honest conversation and confronting white arrogance. If you think the experiences that led up to the creation of the piece are made up or exaggerated, and that makes you uncomfortable, well, maybe the painting's for you. Until next time, go hard in the paint.